One mistake solves most murders. It's small, it's human, and when it's missed, killers walk free. For decades, investigators have relied on the same quiet truth. Most murderers aren't caught by genius detectives or dramatic confessions. They're caught because they slip. They talk to the wrong person. They return to the scene. They leave behind something they never meant to. And usually, that's enough. But sometimes, that mistake doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Sometimes, it fails completely. To understand why, you need to know how most murders are actually solved. In the majority of cases, police don't start with a stranger hiding in the shadows. They start with someone close, a partner, a friend, a coworker, someone who knew the victim's routine, their fears, their last known movements. That familiarity creates opportunity, but it also creates pressure. And pressure is where the mistake happens. It usually begins in the hours after the crime. The killer thinks they've planned everything. The weapon is gone, the story sounds reasonable, the alibi feels solid. But then a detail doesn't line up. A timeline feels off. A phone pings the wrong tower. A neighbor remembers a car that shouldn't have been there. Investigators notice these things because they're trained to look for inconsistency. Not big lies, small ones, the kind people don't rehearse. A grieving partner who answers too quickly. A witness who adds details no one asked for. A suspect who remembers everything except the one moment that matters. And here's the key part. Most killers don't realize which mistake gave them away. Not at first. They think it was DNA or a camera or a tip, but it's usually behavior. Returning to the scene is one of the most common errors. Sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes guilt, sometimes control. The killer wants to see what they've done, to know what police know, to feel close to the chaos they created. Investigators notice who shows up too often, who asks the wrong questions, who seems more interested in the investigation than the victim. Another classic mistake is talking, not confessing, just talking. People believe silence makes them look guilty, so they fill it, they explain, they justify, they correct details that were never wrong, and every word becomes something police can check. But here's where things start to break down, because the system assumes the mistake will be seen, and sometimes it isn't. In cases where the killer is a stranger, the usual behavioral clues disappear. There's no emotional leak, no history, no obvious reason to suspect one person over another. The mistake still happens, but it's buried in noise. A fiber lost in a crowded space, a vehicle seen by someone who never comes forward, a phone that pings near hundreds of others. Then there are cases where investigators lock on to the wrong mistake. This is where failure begins. Once police believe they've found the slip, confirmation bias takes over. Every detail is interpreted through that lens. Evidence that doesn't fit is minimized. Evidence that does is amplified. And the real mistake, the one that matters, goes unnoticed. Sometimes the killer understands this before police do. They stay calm. They say less. They let investigators build the wrong story. There are murderers who were nearly caught early on, only to slip away because the focus shifted too fast. A missed interview, an untested item, a witness statement filed but never followed up on. Years later, when cold case detectives review the file, they often see it instantly. The mistake was there, plain, documented, just not recognized for what it was. And then there's the most unsettling failure of all, when the mistake doesn't come from the killer, but from the investigation itself. Evidence mishandled, notes lost, scenes contaminated, confessions coerced. In those cases, the system creates its own blind spot. The real offender watches from a distance while someone else pays the price. So why does the one mistake that solves most murders sometimes fail? Because it depends on humans noticing other humans. because stress distorts memory, because authority can silence doubt, and because once time passes, mistakes fade into paperwork. Every unsolved case still open today likely contains that mistake, that moment, that detail that didn't belong, waiting for someone to look at it differently. And that's what makes these cases so disturbing. Not that the crime was perfect, but that the imperfection was ignored. Somewhere, the mistake is still there. If stories like this matter to you, if understanding how crimes unravel or don't keeps you thinking, consider subscribing to Casefile Commentary TV. New cases every week.